Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I used to tell myself that family meant sacrifice, so I sacrificed. Every week, without fail, I sent my parents $700. It wasn't charity. It was love. It was the hope that maybe, just maybe, money could rebuild what time and distance had cracked. I thought supporting them meant they would support me too. But on the day of my child's birthday, the one day I hoped they'd show up with even a small smile, they didn't come. No call, no text. Not even an excuse. The cake candles melted into waxy puddles while I refreshed my phone screen again and again, pretending the party was too loud for me to notice the silence. The next morning, still holding on to some shred of faith, I asked them why they didn't show up. My dad didn't hesitate. His voice was flat, like he was talking about the weather. "Your child means nothing to us." Something inside me shattered. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet final crack, like a thread snapping inside a heart already pulled too tight. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I stood there trembling, staring at the man I grew up believing would protect me from the world, only to realize I needed protection from him. I didn't argue. I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't even ask him to explain. I simply walked away. I blocked their numbers, closed the door, and for 40 minutes I just sat there on the floor of my hallway, breathing in the aftermath of a truth I had always suspected but never wanted to admit. Some people aren't parents because they raised you. Some people are just the first heartbreak you survive, but here's the part I didn't expect. Cutting them off didn't break me. It freed me. It taught me that I wasn't obligated to keep bleeding for people who wouldn't even show up for my child. I realized that a family who demands money but can't give love isn't family. They're an anchor tied to your ankle, dragging you into a life smaller than the one you deserve. My child deserves better. I deserve better. And love, real love, deserves space to breathe without fear. Today, my home feels lighter. My heart feels stronger. And every step forward feels like reclaiming a piece of the woman I was always meant to be. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who taught you how to stay silent. I used to believe that money could fill the cracks that love had left behind. Every week, like clockwork, I transferred $700 to my parents. It didn't matter if I was juggling bills or stretching my own paycheck. I convinced myself that helping them meant healing something in us. I told myself that this was what a good daughter did. That responsibility flowed upward and gratitude flowed downward, and maybe one day they'd show me the same effort I kept pouring into them. Each payment felt like planting a seed I hoped would grow into closeness. Maybe a phone call just to ask how I was doing. Maybe a visit, maybe a softening in the way they spoke to me. I imagined my support pulling us back together, smoothing old wounds, reminding them that despite everything, I still chose them. I held on to that hope so tightly it left marks on me. I thought that if I kept giving, eventually they would meet me halfway. But deep down, in the quiet moments between transfers, I felt something heavy pressing on my chest. The fear that I was investing in a relationship that only existed in my imagination. Still, I kept going, telling myself that love sometimes required persistence, that loyalty meant continuing even when it hurt. I didn't realize then that I wasn't building a bridge. I was just burning myself down to keep them warm. When my child's birthday came around, I didn't expect perfection, just presence. A moment, a gesture, even a quick stop by to show that they cared. I decorated the house with trembling hands, blowing up balloons while my heart whispered, maybe this year will be different. I kept checking the driveway, watching every passing car like it might be them. My child kept asking, bright-eyed, "Nani abu aa rahe hain?" And every time I forced a smile, pretending I believed the answer could still be yes. But the day stretched on, and the silence grew heavier. Parents came in with their kids, gifts rustling, laughter filling the house, cameras flashing, but the two people who should have been among the first to arrive never walked through the door. I refreshed my phone so many times the screen smudged with fingerprints. No message. No missed call. Nothing. As the candles flickered on the cake, I felt that familiar ache in my chest, the one that always showed up when I expected something soft from them and received nothing at all. I clapped and cheered and took photos like everything was fine, but there was a small part of me that kept glancing toward the door, as if love could suddenly remember its way home. By the time the last guest left, the house was a mess of wrapping paper and half-eaten cake, but the only thing I noticed was the absence. Their absence. And for the first time, instead of making excuses for them, I just sat on the couch in the dim light and let the truth settle over me like cold air. They didn't forget. They didn't care, not enough to show up for me, and not enough to show up for my child. The next morning I called them, not to fight, not to accuse, but to understand. A tiny piece of me still clung to hope, whispering that maybe there had been an emergency, maybe their phone had died, maybe something, anything, had kept them away. I wanted to believe there was a reason that wasn't rooted in cruelty. So when my dad picked up, I asked gently, almost apologetically, "Why didn't you come yesterday?" There wasn't even a pause. No hesitation. No sigh that hinted at regret. He spoke with the same tone someone uses when ordering tea from a waiter. Flat, emotionless, indifferent. "Your child means nothing to us." The words sliced clean, sharp, and cold. I felt them first in my stomach, like being punched from the inside. Then the ache spread to my chest, tightening, squeezing, stealing my breath. My fingers went numb around the phone. For a second, I genuinely thought I might drop it. I kept waiting for him to laugh, to say he didn't mean it, that he was angry or tired or just saying something thoughtless to hurt me. But he didn't take it back. He didn't soften. He didn't explain. He just let the sentence sit there, like it wasn't a bomb detonating inside me. I felt myself shrinking, like a child again. Small, unwanted, trying to understand what I had done wrong. In that moment, every memory of trying to earn their affection came rushing back. The way I used to bring home good grades hoping they'd notice. The way I forced myself to stay quiet to avoid conflict. The way I kept sending money as if love could be purchased. But this sentence, peeled back every illusion I had ever clung to. It wasn't that they didn't show up. It wasn't that they forgot. It was that they chose not to care. About my child, about me, about the family I was trying to build, the life I was fighting for. Hearing it spoken aloud didn't just hurt. It rewrote something inside me, turning a suspicion into undeniable truth. And once you hear truth so stark, so bare, you can never go back to pretending it's anything else. I didn't argue. I didn't scream or demand an apology. My throat felt too tight to let anything out, and my mind was buzzing with a dull, numbing shock that made everything sound far away. I just stood there in the middle of my living room, phone pressed to my ear, staring at nothing as his words kept echoing over and over, until they almost didn't feel real anymore. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down. I felt my knees weaken and I lowered myself onto the edge of the couch, breathing like someone who had forgotten how. I wasn't crying, not yet. The hurt was too deep, too raw, sitting heavy in my chest like a stone that refused to move. I realized then that there was no point in explaining how much effort I had put into keeping us connected, or how much it meant to me for my child to have grandparents. There was no point telling them how my daughter kept looking at the door during the party, hoping they'd walk in. No point sharing how many times I had made excuses for their indifference, trying to shield her from the same pain I grew up swallowing. So instead of speaking, I acted. I picked up my phone again, not to call back, but to block their numbers. Not in anger, but in clarity. Not to punish them, but to protect myself. One by one, I erased their access to me. My fingers trembled with every tap, but I kept going. Social media, messages, calls, gone. Their presence in my life reduced to the sound of silence. It only took 40 minutes, but it felt like closing the door on years of wishing, waiting, and hurting. 40 minutes to undo a lifetime of patterns. 40 minutes to choose peace over blood. 40 minutes to finally say, without speaking a word, enough. When I finished, I just sat there, my body still trembling, my chest tight. But something inside me had shifted. A fragile strength began to rise, like a flame trying to breathe after years under a blanket. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. But beneath the exhaustion, there was a strange, unfamiliar sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn love that would never come. I wasn't begging, explaining, or apologizing for wanting the bare minimum. I was choosing myself, choosing my child, choosing a future that didn't hurt, and in that trembling silence, I finally understood. Sometimes walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival. In the days that followed, the quiet felt strange, almost too big, like a house suddenly missing a wall. I kept expecting my phone to light up with their names, expecting a fight, an accusation, some dramatic attempt to twist the story and paint me as ungrateful. But nothing came. The silence stretched on, and instead of feeling abandoned, I began to see it for what it truly was: peace. I noticed small changes first. My mornings felt lighter without the weight of wondering if I had disappointed them somehow. I stopped checking my phone out of habit, stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations that only left me drained. My mind, so used to scanning for their approval, finally had room to breathe, and then I began to see my child differently too. Not that she had changed, but I had. I started watching her with clearer eyes, her laughter, her curiosity, her tiny hands reaching for mine. Not as someone I needed to defend from disappointment, but as someone I could finally raise without fear of inherited pain creeping into her life. I realized she didn't need grandparents who didn't value her. She needed a mother who stood tall enough to protect her heart. One afternoon, while I was making dinner, she ran into the kitchen with a drawing, our little family, just the two of us, smiling under a bright, uneven sun. She said, "Mama, we're happy, na?" I turned away for a moment because my eyes burned, but when I knelt down and hugged her, I felt something settle inside me. "Yes," I whispered into her hair. "We're happy, and we're safe." That was when I understood the truth I had avoided for so long. Love isn't measured by who shares your blood. It's measured by who shows up. Who cares? Who stays? I had spent years trying to convince myself that if I tried harder, gave more, sacrificed enough, my parents would eventually soften. But love that must be bought was never love at all. It was a debt they expected me to pay forever. Now, without their shadow hanging over me, I began rebuilding life on my own terms. I surrounded myself with people who celebrated us, who offered warmth without conditions. I started taking my child on small adventures, parks, ice cream, silly late-night movie nights, and each moment felt like healing stitched into time, and somewhere along the way, the wound they left stopped feeling like a hole and started feeling like a doorway into a life where I chose boundaries without guilt, where I gave love without fear, and where my child grew up learning that her worth was never something that could be dismissed. I finally realized that letting go wasn't losing family. It was making space for the one I was creating. In the end, cutting them off didn't leave me empty. It made room for everything I'd been missing. I learned that peace isn't something you stumble into. It's something you choose, sometimes painfully, sometimes trembling, but always bravely. And when I chose it, life didn't collapse. It opened. My child began to grow in a home free from silent wounds, free from conditional love, free from the shadows that used to loom over us. She learned to expect kindness, not chase it. She learned that family is built with presence, not excuses. And in giving her that, I healed parts of myself I thought were beyond repair. There are still moments when the past tugs at me, a memory, a habit, a sudden ache, but it no longer controls me. I don't feel guilty for choosing my own heart. I don't feel ashamed for breaking a cycle that was never mine to carry. I don't feel lost without them. I feel found, because sometimes the greatest act of love is not holding on. It's letting go of what hurts you, so you can hold tightly to what truly matters. And as I watch my child run freely, laughing without fear of disappointment, I know with absolute certainty, I didn't just save myself. I saved her too.